In the early 1970s, Washington, D.C. was a city divided, not just by race or politics, but by fear. Between 1971 and 1972, 6 young black girls vanished from the streets of the nation's capital. They were daughters, sisters, students. Each disappeared while walking home, often just blocks away from safety. Days later, their bodies were found, abandoned along the highways that cut through the city. Each one strangled. Each one discarded like a message that nobody could decipher. The press gave a name to the phantom that haunted D.C., the Freeway Phantom. This wasn't just another string of murders. It was a case that exposed the city's deepest wounds: poverty, neglect, and a justice system that didn't seem to care about black victims. And half a century later, the name Freeway Phantom still echoes. Not for what we know about him, but for everything we don't. The first victim on April 25, 1971, 13-year-old Carol Spinks was sent by her older sister to buy groceries at a nearby 7-Eleven. She never made it home. 6 days later, her body was found off I-295, just a few miles from her neighborhood. She had been sexually assaulted and strangled. The killer had even washed her body, a disturbing sign of ritual or control. The police had little evidence and fewer answers. They assured the public it was an isolated tragedy, but it wasn't. As 2 months later, another young girl, Darlenia Johnson, 16 years old, disappeared while walking home from a friend's house. Her body was found in the same area as Carol's, along the same highway. The community realized the truth. Someone was hunting children. Between 1971 and 1972, the killings continued. Brenda Crockett, 10. Nenomoshia Yates, 12. Brenda Woodard, 18. Diane Williams, 17. Each victim taken from different parts of D.C., but all found near highways. All black, all strangled. Panic spread like wildfire. Parents escorted their kids to school. Streets emptied after dark, and rumors filled the city. Was it a single killer? A group? A police officer? Nobody knew. In July 1971, the body of Brenda Crockett was discovered along Route 295. But this case was different. Before she died, Brenda had called her home, twice. In a shaky voice, she told her mother and sister that a white man had picked her up and that she was being driven home soon. But investigators later discovered that Brenda had been killed long before those calls were made. Who forced her to make them, and why? Months later, when Brenda Woodard, 18, was found dead near Prince George's County, a chilling clue appeared. Tucked inside her coat pocket was a handwritten note, apparently written by Woodard herself. It said, "This is tantamount to my insensitivity to people, especially women. I will admit the others when you catch me, if you can." The handwriting matched Brenda's. It appeared the killer had forced her to write his confession. For detectives, this wasn't just evidence, it was a taunt. The Freeway Phantom was playing with them. The killings had now stretched across more than a year. Dozens of detectives worked the case, from the D.C. Metropolitan Police to the FBI. But progress was slow. Leads went nowhere. Evidence was mishandled. Families begged for justice but got silence in return. Many residents felt the truth. If the victims had been white, the city might have cared more. D.C. in the 1970s was struggling with racial inequality, high crime rates, and deep mistrust of police. For many in the black community, the Freeway Phantom case became a painful reminder of whose lives were valued and whose were not. Parents lived in constant fear. Teenagers traveled in groups, and somewhere out there, a killer kept walking free. Over the decades, investigators chased several leads. One theory pointed to a local gang called the Green Vega Rapists, a violent group that operated in D.C. during the same period. One of its members allegedly bragged in prison about being involved in the murders, but his claims were inconsistent and lacked evidence. Another lead suggested that the killer might have been a police officer or ex-officer. Several witnesses reported seeing a man posing as law enforcement, ordering girls into his car. Given the note written under duress and the victim's obedience, this theory made chilling sense, but no suspect was ever charged. By the mid-1970s, the case went cold, and as years passed, it faded from the headlines, buried beneath newer tragedies and the relentless march of time. Today, more than 50 years later, The Freeway Phantom case remains unsolved. Files have been reopened, DNA evidence re-examined, and new forensic tools have been used. But still, no match. The killer's identity is a ghost locked in history. In 2021, the D.C. Police Department, along with the FBI's Cold Case Division, re-reviewed thousands of pages of reports. But detectives admit the biggest challenge isn't the science, it's the loss of time. Many witnesses are gone, evidence has degraded, and the few who still remember live with the same haunting question: how could he vanish without a trace? Behind the headlines and theories are the families, mothers who never found peace, siblings who still leave flowers by forgotten highway markers. For them, these weren't just cases. They were children who loved to sing, dance, play, and dream. In a world obsessed with famous serial killers like Bundy or Dahmer, the Freeway Phantom is barely remembered. But his crimes were just as real, and his victims just as deserving of justice. The story of the Freeway Phantom isn't just about evil, it's about neglect. A community failed by those who were supposed to protect it. A mystery that still whispers through the streets of Washington. Maybe that's why the name Freeway Phantom still carries weight. Because it represents every unsolved case, every forgotten voice, and every monster who hid behind society's blind spots. If you want more forgotten true crime stories, the ones history tried to erase, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Because the next story might be one you've never heard before.